This is Josh
Dilmaghani.
Yes. Nailed it. From Whitestag Realty. I sent you a message. We're definitely not releasing this one first. I'm going to lose all of my business.
Man, I get it.
So this is Josh's website. If you guys can't see, he's a listing agent, commission as low as 1%. There is a distinction there.
As low as.
But Josh is a real estate agent. Are we on 3 years now, or are you still at 2?
Almost 4.
Okay.
So January will be year 4.
So in January, he'll be in his 4th year of business.
Yeah.
17 agents is what I saw last.
I think so.
And how much in volume this year for the firm?
We're probably going to land really close to 40 million.
Okay.
It's so nerve-wracking. We've closed 28 million. I've got like 8 million active and pending, but you never know how much of that will close. And then obviously we have a couple more months of production after that. So 38 to 40.
Okay. Congratulations. It's a big number.
Thanks.
So where does that put you in terms of real estate agencies for Indiana? Do you know?
I have no clue.
Top 200. Top 200.
Yeah. If it's any, if it helps build perspective, I went to Zubilation last year, and I would introduce myself to other affluent professionals as the owner of the 14th fastest growing boutique discount real estate brokerage in central Indiana, because I don't know where I'm at.
Was the 14th made up?
Yeah. Right.
It's even better that you made it up. And they probably like 14th fastest growing. Where'd you get that stat from?
Yeah, and I just kept putting the discount, boutique, and I just kept giving little disclaimers to separate me from the pack a little bit. But truthfully, I don't know where we stack up, and I think part of that's like my own just desire to keep the blinders on, so to speak. Like, I think because what we do is a lot different than what most real estate brokerages do. As cliche as it sounds, I'm just competing against our numbers last year. You know, last year we did 27.5 million. We might grow it by 30 to 40% this year, and so that feels great.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how you decided to open up your own real estate office with no real estate experience.
Man, I don't even know if I told you the story, but I used to work at something similar to this place, where it's like a co-working space with a lot of like offices for self-employed people or entrepreneurs. And one of my tenants is an attorney, does nothing real estate related, but he had gotten his real estate license like 5 or 6 years ago. Never sold a home, never tried to, but the state, and even to this day, I don't feel like this should be allowed. The state of Indiana just says you got to have your license for 2 years. And then you can either manage someone else's operation or start your own. So Jeff had the foresight to take that first step. And then the model that we do was his idea. And then we met again. I was like, I managed the suite of offices that he worked out of. And at some point, probably 6 or 7 months into knowing each other, he was like, have you ever thought about doing real estate? And I said, yeah, but if you ever talk to those people, the pitch sounds terrible. Like, most realtors don't make it 2 years. Average take-home pay is super low. I was like, that's why I'm doing this instead. And then he pitched the model to me, and it made sense very quickly. So he was kind of my sugar daddy. He put all the money up to start the firm. I did all the work. And then our agreement was at the 2-year mark, when I could get my managing broker's license, I would have the option to purchase half the company. And I kind of like that, because if it was an abysmal failure, I wasn't going to do it, obviously. And 2 years in, I mean, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. You care if I ask how much it cost you for half the company at 2-year mark?
$100. All
right, fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the sweat equity of the previous 2 years. I mean, because when we started, I had no one to teach me. I think April or May of 2019 was our first month actually in existence with a Google presence. And we had 33 people see us online. They didn't even call us. They didn't click on the website. So it's very tough to get business in the beginning. And I didn't know what I was doing. So when you combine those two factors, I was the only agent, I think, until January of the following year. and then we started adding people, and then my job shifted from just my own production to my own production plus managing the team. And so, yeah, that's why it was $100.
How much business did you do? Oh, you were serious about that number.
Yeah.
I thought you were joking. I thought you were like avoiding the question.
No. Yeah, it was the easiest $100 I've ever spent.
I 100% thought you were joking with that number. He doesn't want to say.
Nah. If I do the Dr. Evil pinky, I'm joking. But
okay.
Yeah.
Good for you and him.
Now, obviously, he made a shitload of money in those first 2 years off of like the work that me and the other agents did. I mean, his return on investment, because I don't know what people's perception of a real estate brokerage is, but it's pretty cheap to start.
Yes.
Like, I don't know your process either in starting your mortgage business, but I imagine it's not super expensive.
No, I think we'll eventually get to breaking that down, but I think it's $1,000, $2,000 max.
Right. Like a Steak and Shake franchise costs more, if that tells you how cheap it is to start a real estate company.
Well, I mean, Steak and Shake is...
They're dying.
Bro, but it's so good.
They're dying.
It's so good, though. So many good memories.
It's like $10,000 to get a Steak and Shake, and they give you free fries for life.
It's only $10,000 for a Steak and Shake franchise?
Do not buy a Steak and Shake.
Is that real?
Yeah, franchise is $10,000.
Are they as hard to get as Chick-fil-A?
No, you can be non-religious and own a Steak and Shake.
Yeah, but do they... like, could I own the Westfield one? Dude, Steak and Shake's popping.
No.
Stop. It was popping. Like when... How old are you?
35.
Okay, when we were like 20,
Yeah.
it was popping.
That's when I worked there.
Yeah, but now it's popped, and it's... Please...
It's done for.
Yeah, I think you have that mind of once you see a business venture, you like the car renting thing you've been doing.
That's going really well.
I know, but don't buy a Steak and Shake is my point.
We'll see what happens.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna go look into it. They might be begging me. They might
Do you
build
not
it
see
for
their
me.
signs everywhere? Buy Steak and Shake, $10,000. That's what their billboards literally say nowadays.
As long as I don't have to
Not
work
buy
in the
food.
thing like at Chick-fil-A, because you got to be owner operator. I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm out of the restaurant business.
Bro, I'll tell you this. I got my start managing restaurants. The profit margin is not what you would think. Like, I managed an Arby's when I was 18. I wasn't like the general manager, but I was one of the managers. And I remember learning how to do the P&L at the end of the year. And then I think we did like $750,000 or $800,000 in sales, which is not a busy Arby's by any means. And our profit for the year was $33,000. I'm like, what's the past tense of sling? Slang?
Yeah.
We slang that many beef and cheddars to buy a Toyota Corolla. Like, that's insane.
Your Arby's must have sucked.
Dude, it was terrible.
No business. It was always the worst when you went in, because I worked in food too, so it was always the worst when it was slow. It's like, why am I even here?
Oh my God. And then the answer to why you're there is because you only make, like, I think I started at $5.25 an hour. It's like, you're only here because if they sell 2 large sodas, they just paid for you.
That's fair. So you started your business, got into 50% owner. You were married at the time.
Yes.
And did you have Bo? Or was Bo on the way?
Actually, yeah, that's a good thing to talk about too. Like, when we started the business, Bo would have been like 7 or 8 months old.
So that's a big. How'd that conversation go? And because I'm sure if you're doing a place like one of these co-hatches or whatever the place was that you were at,
Yeah.
you were salaried.
Right. So there's a can of worms question, right? So the first thing I'll say is my wife was my first hater. Like, I will never forget being like,
She's a real estate agent now.
Yes, dude. I think I told her, I was like, I think I'm gonna start a company with Jeff, and she's like, what? Because I had been talking about Jeff for a while. Because even though he's like an extreme introvert, I'm enamored by this guy. Like, it's very rare that someone says something that I haven't heard before. And Jeff says these organic thoughts sometimes. I'm like, holy shit. So anyways, I was kind of like man crushing on him. So when I said we were going to start a company, she's like, I think that's a bad idea. And I told her it certainly could be. But again, I have no financial like investment in this at this point. And my plan was to keep my day job, because my day job was slower than a restaurant ever was. You just sit at the front desk. Occasionally the phone rings. So I had a lot of time to spend doing my pre-licensing course, like reading state law regarding real estate brokerages. I read RESPA before I was even licensed as a realtor, and that's one of the longest pieces of legislation I've ever seen. Not that I see a shitload. But she certainly was a hater. Now, the other aspect to having Bo so young at the time is it's like I have 2 kids, and they're growing up at the same time. Like, as my human gets more real, my company has also gotten more real, and those parallels have maintained for the last 3.5 years shockingly well.
How did you convince her to let you start the business or let you dab into it? Was it because did she say yes eventually because you had the part-time or the full-time job, or did you do it behind her backs?
True. I mean, she knew what I was doing. I don't think I ever had buy-in. Okay, like full 100% buy-in. I don't think I had it. I kept my day job until June of 2019. And this is kind of a funny story. So it's a Friday in June. I come into work, and I have an HR call on my calendar at 4:30. And I was like, I looked at my one employee that I had just hired, and I was like, Kayla, I think I'm getting fired today. And she's like, why? And I was like, well, HR doesn't call you at the end of day Friday for good news. So I just kind of, that day I came up with a list of like the last things I hadn't taught her, and like, here's what the keys are for this and all that bullshit. And at 4:30, I go into this conference room. I have my direct boss on one end of the table and an HR rep on like a phone. Okay. And the HR rep was like, do you know you violated a company policy? And I'm like, no. Because I hadn't peed in a cup in a while. So I just kidding. And she goes, yeah, you can't go into business with a tenant. And I'm like, man, I had no idea. And she goes, yeah, but regardless of if you knew or not, you broke the rule. And I was like, well, hopefully you can understand my confusion, because here's the other thing. The whole time me and Jeff were doing this, I didn't keep it a secret. I told my boss, I was like, man, me and Jeff are starting a real estate company. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. And she would say things like, oh, that's so cool, or how exciting. Not like, hey, that's a violation of company policy. So at the end of the call, the HR rep was like, well, I'm going to give you an option. You can quit real estate, stay here, we'll give you your final written warning, despite no previous disciplinary action whatsoever, or you can quit us and just go do real estate. So I was like, can I call my wife? I step in the other room, I call Joanna. At that point, I had closed a couple of transactions. I think she kind of saw the silver lining. I was like, I'm going to do something risky. I was like, I'm quitting. And so I went in there, I thanked them for their time, and I left.
Okay.
And then our office was in that suite for the first like year and a half. It was super awkward.
It's nice of you not to throw your boss under the bus. You didn't just look over and be like, I told you I was doing this 3 months ago.
I was a little butthurt. I found out after the fact, like, they changed another company policy. So if a tenant hires like one of the staff of the company that rents out the offices, they have to pay that person's salary for like a year or something like that. So crazy to think about, but in retrospect, I'm glad it happened, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably as a business owner, you're like, yeah, I sort of get it.
Man, I still think I'd handle it different, you know?
Oh, yeah. Your boss definitely probably should have known her own rules.
Right.
She was probably just offhandedly telling somebody about how great it was going for you. And like, Josh just closed his first loan with so-and-so. And they're like, the tenant?
Man.
He can't do that.
Yeah.
That's,
and here we are.
So, some big changes for you in the last year. You've grown. Indiana got to a point where you decided, hey, Jimmy, I'm going to North Carolina for no reason whatsoever. No family, nothing.
Yeah.
Not even going to live in a beach house, just going to North Carolina.
Middle of the state, yeah.
Going to North Carolina.
Man. So there's personal aspects to that decision. For instance, like, so I didn't have any family in Indy. My wife did. And then her family started to disperse a bit. So it kind of made sense for us to get out of town, too. Also, winter. We're just... You don't realize how much winter affects and runs your life until you don't have it anymore. Like, Christmas last year was our first Christmas in Charlotte. It was 70 degrees. I was like, damn, I could take this. I have since learned regarding weather, the issue is bugs. Because winter kills bugs, and we don't have winter in Charlotte, and so it sounds gross, but I'm going to openly, publicly say on the podcast, we got cockroaches. Okay? Like, at first we moved down there, and there's, like, cockroaches in our house, maybe, like, 2 to 5 cockroaches a week, right? Which is, like, 10 more than I'd like to see. And we were like, are we the only ones with cockroaches? And then we start befriending the neighbors, and eventually it came up that someone else mentioned a cockroach story. I'm like, y'all got cockroaches too? I was so happy to relate and connect with a fellow Charlottite or whatever they're called. And it turns out everyone has cockroaches. And they're rebranded in the South. You don't call them cockroaches. They're called palmetto bugs. Okay?
Is that
It's like, yeah. It's like when COVID first came out, we all called it coronavirus, and Corona, the beer company, is like, "Ee." And now we're like, okay, we'll just keep calling it COVID. They're palmetto bugs. But I will never forget my first interaction with one. We had just moved in. We live in a tri-level home. And I go upstairs, get ready for bed, and I see on a lampshade this thing, and I yelled. I was like, Joanna! And she's like, what? I was like, I think the Roku remote is possessed. Because it was this little, I say little, it's this big black thing just, and so now we have a vacuum cleaner just dedicated to palmetto bugs. We see one, we bought the hose, and they just live in there in this little community. Have you ever seen Solar Opposites?
So you don't kill them?
Nah, no. I don't know what their guts look like.
So you only suck them up.
Yeah.
That's the way you handle your bugs.
Have you seen Solar Opposites?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's made by the Rick and Morty people, and that's why I like it. But it's this alien family, and they shrink humans and put the humans in these little glass tanks in their bedroom, and then the humans continue to live in this new, smaller civilization. I always imagine that's what the palmetto bugs are doing.
In your vacuum.
Man.
Do you have a vacuum that's dedicated just to the bugs?
We do, yeah. We have 2 vacuums. There's the palmetto vac, and then the rest of the house vac. It's disgusting, and I hate myself for bringing it up. The professional reason for moving to Charlotte.
I would love to see a picture of this vacuum.
Bro, I'll send it to you. I know, like, once every couple weeks we'll empty it out and just dump all the... By that point, they die because they're done feeding on the dust in the vacuum, I guess, and we'll dump. Okay, the professional reason for going to Charlotte. Man, so obviously we're a lower commission agency, and it's had a lot of success in Indianapolis. Actually, here's the etymology of this. Okay, so January of 2021, I had a Keller Williams agent reach out, and they're like, hey, I'm just interested in learning more about your brand. I'm thinking about making a move, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, let's meet up. Whenever I meet an existing agent, I'll pull their numbers to see how many homes are they selling, because from my standpoint, the more experience you are, the better. And this guy sold like 35 homes the year before, which for a single agent, that's impressive. So I did ask, I was like, what's intriguing you about Whitestag? And he was like, man, all my business is friends and family, which is great, but then I have to live in Danville, Indiana for the rest of my life. He was like, your model, I can go anywhere and do that. And it was like a movie. I heard it over and over. It was like, I could go anywhere and do that, anywhere and do that. And it kind of planted the seed. That was the first time I started thinking, like, holy shit, we've done this in like a $250,000 or $260,000 market. How much different would it, or how much quicker success could we find in a higher price point market? Now, obviously, I don't want to go somewhere like San Diego came up at some point with me and Jeff, but the issue is it's completely oversaturated with agents. I mean, every market is right now, but San Diego even worse, because there the homes cost so much. Like if you sell 3 homes, you've made 6 figures, right? Charlotte intrigued me. We like North Carolina. We like the weather. And the average home costs about 50% more in Charlotte versus Indy. So it's not
so
so
$450. Still conforming.
400, 425, something like that. Yeah. And again, with home sellers saving money on a percentage basis with us, I think just the higher price point made a lot of sense. I probably won't know how that's worked out for about another year. Because I'm still in that stage where, like, I have 3 North Carolina closings next week, and that'll bring me up to 2.1 million so far this year there closed, which is very close to what I did year 1 in Indy. But year 1 in Indy, I had no clue it would grow into being this.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to replicate that process.
Okay.
Which is tough.
Is it going okay though? I can hear you breathing in the mic. It's driving me nuts.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Just please stop breathing.
Could you mute it? You don't have to stop breathing.
It's muted.
Sorry.
Trying to hack our TV here.
Wow.
That's wild. I don't know what
Just
that is.
yell the number.
Yeah, right. I'm already connected to it.
Damn. What was your question? How's it going? North Carolina, I didn't know this going in. It is one of the toughest states to get licensed in. So I failed that exam 3 times, despite the fact that I openly do this full time for a living. And the contracts are a lot different than Indiana. So, like, the example I always give people is Indiana's purchase agreement is 8 pages. North Carolina's is 16. So there's a lot more. You got to know more about septic tanks, termite bonds, oil tanks, despite the fact that in the immediate market I work, those things don't really come up.
Is it more litigious? Like California, I heard, is like if you misrepresent anything, it could fall back on you. Is North Carolina like that, or is there a reason why it's 16 pages versus 8?
As far as is it more litigious, I don't know. I mean, even in Indiana, like, I really value doing our job well enough that no one ever sues us or our clients don't sue the other parties. So I don't know.
Okay.
And then same thing in North Carolina, like, that aspect I don't know. I can tell you what makes it 16 pages is there's a lot of things that probably could be an addendum. There's a whole page about oil tanks. Dude, you're not going to find a home with an oil tank in Charlotte. There's just none. Like, that should be its own separate form for when that comes up. Their offers don't have deadlines. So that's also an interesting component. You can submit an offer and just wait.
Can you set a deadline?
I'm sure you could. And I'm sure as I listen to this podcast a year from now, I'll be like, you freaking idiot. But it's just, that's the process of learning, I guess, without a teacher is I just read the forms. It's not there. Maybe there is a way, but I got to wait until I sell a home and I see a buyer's agent send me an offer with the deadline. I'm like, oh, that's how you do it.
How did your team take it when you told them, hey, your fearless leader's moving to North Carolina?
Man, that's a good question. I think some people, there are things I do that make my team nervous, right? And so far, I have more good karma with them than bad. So I think that was one. Everyone was nervous. I think only one person verbalized it. I was pretty confident it would be good for the team for 2 reasons. One, if I'm in Indy, the likelihood of me taking some of the leads that come in was probably higher, obviously. And then 2, and this is, I didn't think about this till after we moved, drive time. I was driving like 30 or 40 minutes to get to the office, 30, 40 minutes back. Maybe between appointments in a given day, I would drive another hour or something. And that's time lost where I could be texting, calling, email. I mean, sometimes I call, obviously, but texting and emailing. And for the most part in Charlotte, I wake up, I clock in, and I'm available. And I have some agents that do regularly wake up at 6 a.m. and they'll start sending emails. And it's game on. You know, so it's kind of like gaining a couple hours back each day that I can help support the team.
Okay. Did you lose anyone when you moved? I know.
No.
For those of you guys who don't follow Josh on Facebook, you should. He has one of the more entertaining Facebook strategies. I think probably has a lot of friends in real estate, but just as many enemies. You know, so did you lose anyone? Because I know retention is a big thing for you.
Not yet.
Okay.
if I'm looking in the crystal ball, I think I could lose a couple next year. But yeah, I mean, all time, we've had 2 or 3 agents that we've let go just for performance issues. We've only ever had one tell us they would like to leave. And that is insane in real estate, because in a healthy market, the turnover rate for new licensees tends to be about 75% don't make it 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And to be 1 out of 17 or 18, that's wild to me.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
again, I think I'll lose some. I mean, the market is slowing down. It has taken longer to sell a home than it was this time last year, obviously. And these factors are tough to overcome.
Yeah, 7% interest rates will do that too. Dude.
Man. And I think just,
That just snuck up out of fucking nowhere for me.
yeah, and the market changes, and it is what it is. But I think what takes a longer time to change is how real estate agents operate, what seller expectations are, and what buyer strategies are to get homes. Those take longer to change and adjust than the market.
If I couldn't blame Powell for the market, I would blame real estate agents for overreacting to the interest rates going up.
So are you one of these date the rate, marry the house people?
It makes sense, but I always look at them and say, can you afford this payment? And if the answer is no, then we need to drop your purchase price.
Right.
You know, if this number makes you scared, we have to do something about it. So
I would love to be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations. Like, I think a lot of prospective buyers do not understand the concept of building equity. Okay. Is your mortgage payment $2,000 a month? And that freaks you out. And maybe they say yes, but it's like, of that $2,000, are you capturing a certain amount back in equity?
So, and I hear that, but then you have to look at it from a perspective of like, are you putting somebody in a financially winning situation? Or are you going to make them house poor? And that's where it gets a little difficult, is when you have, you know, a single parent coming up to you and saying, hey, I want to spend 40% of my net bring home or my gross bring home on this house. And you're like, you know, gas is $5, right?
Man.
So that's where it gets a little scary, because then, you know, somebody asked me yesterday, so what would you advise, 5% or 20%? And I said, for the most part, it's 5% down. I don't want you to put 20% down unless you're in a good financial situation or you know this is your forever home.
Right.
You know, so I said it's situational. And by the end of the conversation, I just said, I think you should go 5% down. You know, you only have 60 grand and it's coming from your house.
And that's interesting, because I feel like when rates were like in the high 2s, every lender's advice at that time was also put as little down as possible, because you're like, take as big of a loan as you can, because that money is basically free.
Yeah, and I understand that. For me, it's about, you know, the average American has $6,000 in their account or less. So, you know.
Once again, I'm below average. Okay, just kidding.
So that's where it's where it became real interesting for me, is like, I always ask 2 questions. What do you want your monthly, not what do you want, what size home are you looking at? I said, what do you want your monthly payment to be on this house? And we start from there, you know, and then ultimately they're disappointed to find out that they're, you know, $500 off of where they were looking at on Zillow.
Right.
And then the second question becomes, how long did it take you to save this money? You know, and if that answer is in a year or 2 years, and somebody died or they sold a house and that's all their money, you know, it's like, hey, we need to be smart about what we're doing with this money, because, you know, how many houses have you sold and they've, you know, somebody's called you a week later and been like, hey, my water heater just went out. What do I do?
Yeah, get a new one.
Enjoy that $1,000 bill.
Man.
So that's the things that I try and look at with the consumer, but
right,
you know,
I think, not to make everything about us, but like also being the lower commission agency, we tend to attract higher value properties and maybe more affluent homeowners. And so that's not, man, I really like the question of how long did it take you to save this money? You know, because that's not a type of client we interact with a ton. I mean, we would. They just, it's not who calls us the most.
It's weird because I would say affluent people I don't have to have that conversation with.
Right.
They always come to me, I want to spend the least amount of money on this. It's like, okay, I'll be
Yeah.
happy to help. You know, so it's a lot different conversation. You know, they always have a financial advisor too. So it's not usually a one-to-one conversation. It's I'm having the conversation and they're fact-checking me with the financial advisor.
Right.
So, or two other lenders. So I find that interesting. So what does your, so I see you posting on Facebook, and can you tell me how the other real estate agencies feel about your as low as 1% pitch and everything? Because I see you try and help people on Real Estate Mastermind, which has about, 15,000, 100,000 people in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, how are you guys getting leads? And you're like, I advertise 1%, and then you just get roasted
Man.
every time.
So it's another loaded question. First, I'll kind of comment on like my experience from day one and how realtors felt about us then and how they feel about us now. So like when I first started, my next door neighbor worked for a bigger brokerage, and I told him, I was like, man, how do you feel? I didn't tell him I was starting a brokerage, but I was like, how do you feel about these 1% companies or lower commission agencies? And he was very much of the opinion that it was bad for real estate. I'm like, okay, cool. And then in the co-working space I manage, one of the other tenants was also a realtor. And I was like, how do you feel about these companies? And also thought it was a terrible idea. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So we started the company, and then the agent that worked in our suite, 6 months in, was asking me, how am I getting all this business? I was like, bud, I told you 6 months ago. Like, I just don't charge what you charge. And then another agent was reaching out to see if they can host open houses at our listings because they don't have any listings of their own. And so early on, it kind of built that affirmation. Like, I knew enough as a consumer to understand what Jeff and I were trying to do, but it was cool to see the agents that were like, yeah, that's a dog shit idea. And then quickly be like, whoa, you know. And I've acknowledged throughout the years, too, that not every agent wants to sell 30 plus homes a year. I don't think it's that daunting. I mean, you say 30 homes a year, that's 2.5 homes a month, you know. Some homes are really going to take you like 10 to 20 hours of work. And some could take you 40, right? It's very rare that I spend all my waking hours selling one property. So when you think about it from a workload standpoint, let's say the average home is 30 hours of work, which I think it's below that, but just rounding up to prove the point, it's about 900 hours of work in a calendar year to sell 30 homes. So while some agents, their business model is, I only want to sell like 6 to 10 homes, and I want to make 60 grand doing that, and I'm good with it. Cool. I want to sell 30 homes. I'll make 6 figures. A lot of what I do is listings, or a lot of what our firm does, obviously, is listings. And those tend to generate repeat and referral business quicker because either a home seller is going to purchase a home as well, or at the very least, your sign is in a yard for a month or two. You know, there's a street in Plainfield. When I first started, one of the homes was my own home, but I sold my home. A neighbor called that I never met. So they had saw the sign. I sold their home. And it happened 3 more times in the next like 4 or 5 months. You know, we had 5 homes that we just bang, 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 bang off the yard signs. Okay, so that's another reason I like listings. There's also in Franklin Township, there's a cul-de-sac, and we're like slowly just selling all the homes on the cul-de-sac, and it's the same thing. The yard signs are great. And I think that model of trying to sell 30 homes a year is advantageous because the ultimate goal for a realtor is get to a point where you don't have to solicit business and everyone just calls you and says, sell my home, help me buy a home. And for a lot of realtors, that process to get to that point takes 10 plus years. I don't want to take 10 years to get to that point. Am I fully there now? No. further because I moved to a different market. Where I don't know anyone. So maybe that's some level of like self mutilation to have success in this market and then just up and move.
No, I think it's a B sample to see if what you've done in Indiana is replicable.
Yeah,
Replicatable.
and that's part of the goal because eventually I want to start selling franchises, and if we can show we did it in 2 markets very similarly, I think that helps us sell it. But to, I guess, bring the question full circle, now, in terms of how realtors feel about us, I still think generally they don't like what we're doing, but at some point you can't question the results. I mean, the amount of agents I've brought on as new licensees that have had very quick success, it's insane. The amount of agents I brought from other brokerages. One of my best friends in the brokerage now, Daniel, and hopefully he doesn't kill me for saying this, he looks like a grown-up Bobby Hill. He doesn't have...
Bobby.
Yeah. He's not the nicest guy on earth, but he's a great dude, right? And when I met him, he was with another firm. He had sold 1 home the year before for $90,000, okay? And the first year with us, he sold like 20 homes for like $4 or $5 million. And I take a lot of pride in our ability to do that. So again, you can't question the results. So I got more hate in year 1 than I get now.
I think that what you're doing too for new people, Christian and I, we don't hire new people because I can't provide them leads.
Right.
So like if somebody came to me fresh green, like I just turned somebody down last week. I was like, hey man, we're not a good fit for people who are new. You got to go to a bigger lender who can give you leads and reps. And I think what you guys are doing are providing those people confidence with strangers.
Yes.
And then eventually they will have the confidence and people will see their success. Their friends and family will see their success that they're having with people that don't know and trust them. They're like, hey, I've known you for 10 years and you see you're winning on Facebook. Can you just do my house too?
And Daniel's a good example of that. So one of the gripes when I first met with him before he joined us is he's like, man, my friends and family don't use me. And I told him, I was like, man, I stalked you online. I couldn't really tell you're a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to help you get business and do the business, but you've got to post about it, and you got to let people know I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And one big thing we've seen in his time with us is now his friends and family use him and refer him to other people. And it's great for me as the business owner because now, I mean, the goal is we give people leads to get them started, get them going, get them to learn the process of transacting a home. But I tell all my agents, your goal at some point is you don't need leads. And at that point, you leave Whitestag. And I think it's very healthy as an employer to tell people your goal should be to leave, right? I've seen a lot of businesses that have employees in one position for 15 or 20 years, and I don't think that's healthy. So from a standpoint, like, I think people have just got to grow. Now, are all my agents going to leave? Probably not. I'd love if they like start their own companies or...
Why would you want them to leave though? So we'll use Daniel as an example. Daniel can charge 3% or 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he leave you guys if he can just charge his friends and family up to 3%? Like, I'm sure you're not capping him like that. Or saying, hey, Daniel, don't sell your friends 3%. You got to do 1%. Because it's as low as 1%. So I don't want to make that distinction. It's not everything.
Yeah, if you actually take our aggregate, and I'll answer your question about why would someone, or why would I want them to leave. But
yeah.
If you take our aggregate commissions that we've ever received on transactions, sales, and purchases, it's like 2.25%. So I'm actually not that much cheaper than the next guy. Right? From a commission standpoint.
Delete that.
But, I mean, I can also give the other side of that argument. We've had transactions that we've charged 0.5%, okay, plus whatever we offer to a buyer's agent. I think I need to denote that because not everyone knows how this works. But, yeah, I mean, Carrie joined us as a new licensee last year. We had the opportunity to list a home in Meridian Kessler with a luxury home flipper. And the guy would not pay us more than 0.5%. But I told Carrie, I'm like, look, it's $4,000. It's your sign in the yard. It's experience. And this guy flips homes. He will hire you again if you do a great job. You know, it's one of the smoothest transactions we had last year.
Did he hire her again?
Once.
Let's
so
go.
now it's 2. Yeah.
It's $8,000 to put a sign in the yard.
Right.
So what goes into listing a house for those? Answer the Dan question, then I got to ask what goes into listing a house.
Oh, yeah. So why would an agent leave us, or why would I want them to leave us? I think making sure people know their growth is the goal engages them more. Again, are all 20 of my agents going to leave? No. Some will. And the goal for me as a business owner is when they leave, it's got to suck so bad. You know, if somebody leaves and you're like, oh, thank God. That's terrible, right? I want 20 people that if and when they leave, I'm going to be devastated. And then I'll find another new licensee or another person struggling with another brokerage, bring them on board and rinse and repeat. And that's how you make the brand as strong as it can be, given how small it is, in my opinion. But I know that's counterintuitive to what a lot of people would say.
No, I just don't. Even with that explanation, I'm struggling to understand. Like, where would Dan go? Like,
Start his own thing. Compete with me.
But why?
Man.
Like, so, and this is what I find interesting about your world versus my world, except with the exception of, like, I've heard Compass doesn't cap some people. You guys cap at like $12,000.
No, it's way higher than that.
25?
25. Yeah.
Okay. You know, so when you're capping somebody at 25,000, that's actually not that bad if you're pulling your weight. Assuming you have technology behind it and everything else, you know, there's some fees, you know.
Yeah, I think the tougher part too is as a company, we don't actually capture the whole 25,000 even when someone caps.
Yeah.
So like I have an incentive built in to where if an agent pays in 15 grand in a calendar year, we'll pay their my board dues next year. So that's kind of like kicking back 10% of all that. Once they cap at 25, if we still give them leads after that, it is at a split. So they get 100% of whatever they produce. But man, I pay for the agent's E&O insurance. I pay for their like every email address that's at whitestagrealty.com. It's like $150 or $160 for a year. And then we do stuff throughout the year. We tried to go paintballing this year, and the paintball people never showed up, so we ended up doing laser tag.
Well, you just got to think, like, you have the signs. Do they pay for the signs, or do you pay for the signs?
They do now. When I first started, I paid for those too. I was so desperate for an agent. Yeah. But I really have built it so we don't make a penny until the agent does. And like one of my second newest agent we brought on board, he came from a company that charged him $700 a month and never gave him a lead. And I'm like, man, that's crazy that he thought that was the only option.
That's fucking wild.
Right.
The number of different real estate agent models.
And then when he called the broker team leader or whatever to say he was leaving, they offered to just discontinue the $700. And to me, that's more of a slap in the face because it's like, oh yeah, we didn't actually need that.
Why would you be charging a new person who's starting their own business $700 a month?
I'll say this without naming any specific brokerages. A lot.
No, you should go ahead and name that brokerage.
A lot of firms, in my opinion, are predatory. If your turnover rate is 75% and you keep adding people and you charge them monthly fees, you're predatory.
So that's I don't like calling that predatory. That's where you and I sort of disagree. I don't think it's predatory because it may be a failure on training or allowing somebody to come in and do it part-time, but I can't call it predatory because I think they're hiring people with different ideas instead. So if Christian quit doing his job today where he gets paid a healthy salary and he went over to another big real estate agency and they promised him a job and then didn't train him or help him or feed him leads, I would consider that predatory. But if Christian was like, hey guys, I just want to do this on the side, I'll pass the test, can I hang my license with you? I don't consider that predatory, and I think that muddies the water in the numbers that you guys are seeing.
I would have your opinion if the turnover rate for new licensees was 10 to 25%.
But don't you think it would be if there wasn't so many part-time agents?
Yeah, but that's a different issue. All I'm saying is if my turnover rate is 75%
Mm-hmm.
and I keep adding everyone that's interested in joining me, knowing that, especially using this agent I brought up as an example, knowing I'm going to make $8,400 a year off of them, again, in my opinion, and we may have an impasse here, that's predatory.
Yeah.
Because you don't need those people. You just want their money.
For the business model where they're taking $700 a month, that's predatory.
Right, okay.
For a business model that only charges you when you produce,
Agreed.
I think less predatory. Now, if they have a $150 desk fee a month and they're not helping you get there, and you're stupid enough to continue to pay that $150,
Yeah.
that's sort of on you. So
It's interesting because not every agent's aware of it. Like there's one agent on Facebook who he's kind of chilled out recently, but he has been very vocal about his dislike for me on social media. And one thing I brought up a few times is the amount of agents that pay 50-50 commission splits. And he'd say like, who pays a 50-50 commission split? I'm like, buddy, a lot of people. Like, in my opinion,
that's how the team models work, right?
a lot of them. But it's like, look, if you're charging 6 or 7, let's take so quit talking percentages for a minute, and we'll just talk about dollars. So we'll take an average home of $250,000. You charge 6% to sell the property. That's $15,000, right? Yeah. Let's say each agent. Let's say they split it evenly. This is all hypothetical. Commission is legally negotiable in all situations. Okay. But again, you charge 6%. It's $15,000 on a $250,000 home. You split that evenly with the buyer's agent. So you, as the listing agent, take 3%, which is $7,500 for potentially, at the most, I think 40 hours of work. I don't think it touches 40 hours, but just hypothetically, you're making damn near $200 an hour. And your brokerage takes half of it. So now you get $3,750. You got to pay taxes. So now you're at $2,800 as your true take home. And that blows my mind.
Still $50 an hour.
I agree, but well,
If you started at 2, went to 1.
man, but it started so much higher. That's the piece. It's like, and that's why the average agent makes 50 or 60 grand a year and they're good with it.
Yeah.
Sell 10 homes, make $50K, and do it again next year. I didn't want any part of that game.
Okay. So how do you do the pitch? Can you pitch me like I'm a customer and I called you and I said, hey, I saw you're doing 1% listings.
Yeah.
You know?
Man, if it's the initial phone call, I explain it's as low as 1%, and we will never quote a price until we see the home. Okay? And seeing the home is going to do a few things for us. One, it's an in-person meeting with the client, so they can start to see, like, do I trust this human, whoever I send to go meet with them? 2, gives us time to look at market activity and determine how long do we think it's going to take to sell the home. Like last year, we did a lot more 1% listings than we've done this year so far because we were pretty confident we'd put the sign in the yard and the home would sell immediately. And in most cases, it did. We were also pretty confident that it would sell above list price. So even at 1% of, like there was a home we did in Brownsburg last year, just thinking of a quick example. We took 1%, listed it at $295, and it sold for $340. You know, and so our 1% made more money for us. So that's one aspect. And the third is the condition of the home. You never truly know till you're in it. Like some homes look great and they smell like cat piss. Probably not a 1% listing, right? And I just explain it. The less work we think it will be to sell your home, the less we charge. And people are good with that. You know, the number one hesitation I've gotten all the time? What do you think it is?
Time, maybe?
What do you mean?
Like time it takes to sell your house? Like at 1%, are you not advertising our house everywhere you should be? So it'll take longer.
You're close to what I thought it was. I thought a lot of people would think if they list a home for 1%, they do less than other brokerages that charge more. But actually, the number one hesitation I've gotten is how can you do it for 1%? And that's where it just goes into like, again, for the most part, commissions legally negotiable. Okay. People have been charging 6 or 7% since like the 90s. And now we have the internet in its current form, which is incredible. We have cell phones in our pockets. We have a multiple listing service online. We have Bluetooth enabled lock boxes. The ease, we have texting, like the ease with which we can transact a home is unbelievable compared to 30 years ago. You know, MyBor back in the day would take a binder of that week's listings to every real estate office in the market, and you'd have to flip through and photocopy the listings and then meet with your clients in person to show it to them, and then people would call your office phone and leave a message on your answering machine that you'd have to check later on the little recorded cassette tape. I'd have to charge 6 or 7%. That's so much work. You could only sell a home a month, I'd imagine. Now, dude, I'm closing a home next week. I don't know where it is on a map. Like, I know the street address. I could Google it. I know it's in Indianapolis, so I could narrow it down. But if you ask me east side, west side, south, I don't know.
Have you not been in the house?
I've never been in it.
I thought you met the customer.
Huh?
Did you not meet is it not one of
No,
yours?
I'm on the buy side.
Oh.
And it's my buyer's in California. I'm in Charlotte, and we're transacting this home in Indianapolis. And it's a very weird reality, but it's possible.
Did you do a home inspection?
Oh, yeah. I didn't go to it. Yeah. That's probably...
Home inspector, I sat in a meeting once with a home inspector. He said that you shouldn't go to it if you're a real estate agent.
Many agents... Gesundheit. Just kidding. Many agents shouldn't go. Any agent that says going to a home inspection is a liability should not go because they are a liability, in my opinion. Agents say some of the stupidest stuff at home inspections. They'll say, yeah, that's mold. Did you test it? Right? Did you collect the spores and take them to a laboratory? Is it a live spore or a dead spore? Is it aspergillus or I don't know. That's the only type of mold I think I know. Maybe I made up a word. And they just say the most mindless, stupid things that they do not know, they're not qualified to know, and they didn't test it to make sure they're correct. And those agents should not go to a home inspection.
Do you go to your home inspections?
Most of them.
Really?
Yes. In my opinion, it's 2 to 4 hours hanging out with your client. This is a relationship business. It's good to build that relationship. 2, you're going to learn. I mean, I still learn stuff at home inspections all the time. And in the beginning, I mean, the notes I would take at a home inspection was like 2 pages. I'd be like, what the hell is asbestos? What the, and then I go home and Google all these things. And now maybe at a home inspection, I learn, okay, you're not supposed to have PEX connected to copper plumbing. Is that something I'm going to call out if I see it? I might just say like, hey, possibly this is an issue, right? Because I'm not a licensed plumber. But yes, I learn at every home inspection. But I'll give you a real-life example of somebody saying something stupid at an inspection. So I helped people sell a home last year, and when the buyer did their inspection, they found mold in the basement. And so I'm talking to my sellers about it because they had only owned the home for like a year and a half or something. And they said that when they bought the home, their inspector noted the mold, and their realtor said, "Oh, you can just take some bleach and a towel and wipe that up, and it's fine." Now, granted, I was like, "Well, did you guys use a towel and some bleach and wipe it up?" And they're like, "No, we never got around to it." So shame on them. But
was it still mold?
It's never tested. No one. If you ever read an inspection, which I don't know if in your line of work you would, like, it always says mold-like or microbial growth or whatever. But they'll never call it mold because you don't test it. But again, that agent should not have said, that's not an issue. and given their own home remedy. Now, would that work?
Just rub some bleach
Yeah.
on it.
Would it work? Possibly. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a certified mold expert. But if I had mold in my house, I'd probably wipe it up with bleach. Would I advise someone to do the same thing? No. I'm disgusting, right? I would live in a house with some mold, and it's kind of like eating bread with a little dark spot on it.
Pretty confident the reason you're not supposed to do that is because when it's sort of like asbestos, once you touch it, you let the spores in the air, and the spores are what affect you, not the mold necessarily sitting on a wall.
Okay, I'm going to take off my real estate name tag.
Okay.
And I'll just... I'm going to go way off topic for a moment.
Fair enough.
We dropped 2 atomic bombs on the sovereign nation of Japan. Thousands of people vaporized. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. There are Japanese citizens floating through the air at all times, probably all over the earth. We don't care about that, right? Mold is in the air. Dust is in the air. Cockroach poop is in the air. The air is disgusting. We breathe it every day and we're fine. Most of us. I'm the ungermaphobe. I know. Yeah.
You just compared mold to dropping a bomb on Hiroshima.
I'm just saying, there's more in the air. Like, if you tested the air every single day, you would be freaked out by what's in it. You'd be freaked out.
I would not be. Just so we're clear, that is not me.
Christian would be freaked out.
No, I don't get it.
We're not those
Yeah.
guys. So no, I 100% wouldn't. I just the mold. I've heard that home remedy before. In a past life, I owned a carpet cleaning business for like
Nice.
6 months, and one of the things was a mold certification, and so
Wow.
there is why you would not want to do that.
I can also say, regarding mold specifically, I think
Dead Japanese people, call it what it is.
I think so I know of people that own a mold remediation company, and it is so profitable. They own 3 luxury homes in 3 different states.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the chemicals they use are like 50 cents a gallon or something. And they charge thousands of dollars to remediate because everyone's terrified of it. I don't know. I'm probably the last, but to bring it back to going to home inspections, would I tell a client that is or is not mold? No. Would I say it is or is not an issue? No. My recommendation, further testing. Get a more qualified professional opinion. I have my own personal opinion, but I keep that inside, and that's why I go to home inspections.
For relationships.
Relationships and learning.
Yep.
I mean, like, we did a home in Irvington a couple years ago that had asbestos siding, and like, even that inspector was like, as long as it's in good shape, it's completely fine. And I've seen other inspectors over the years that say, like, asbestos siding is a huge hazard. You've got to re-side the entire home. So the other part of learning is you learn everyone's got an opinion. Do you know what a weep hole is? Another example. In, like, brick on relatively new construction, they'll put the little holes in between, like, every so many bricks. Have you ever seen that?
I've like where
Yeah. Man, I had an inspector tell me straight up, weep holes were required in Indiana starting in like 1985. We were selling a home built in 1991 and it didn't have weep holes, and they called it a defect, and the buyers wanted us to add weep holes. I've had another inspector tell us weep holes weren't required until 2010, and if the home doesn't already have it, do not add them. So another part of learning is you learn. No one knows. Nobody knows. I'm selling a home right now.
it's because the consequences are 10, 20 years down the line.
Yes, and that is a brilliant point. I'm selling a home now in Harrisburg, North Carolina, and it has polybutylene plumbing, which was, I think it started in mobile homes, and then it transitioned briefly into residential real estate, like in the late 80s, early 90s. So this home was built in 91, has polybutylene plumbing, and the inspector was like, you got to replumb the home. Well, my contention, my personal opinion, is that the home has been there for 31 years with this plumbing with no issues, right? So is it a problem? You'd think it would have been a problem in the last 30 years, okay? And so we're talking to a plumber, and they were talking about putting it, or we asked them about putting PEX plumbing, which is kind of the more current standard. And he said, well, the problem with PEX is we've only had that in homes for like 10 years. You know, we haven't tested it for 30 or 40 years to know how it's going to be, because who would test a new construction material for 4 decades before rolling it out? So everything in your home, at some point, someone's going to be like, yeah, that's a defect.
Yeah.
And it wasn't back when it was put in the home, hopefully.
Okay.
And home inspections. Kill me now.
That's how you feel about appraisals.
That'll be a different podcast.
that's your appraisal opinion. Is that your professional opinion?
But, I mean, my professional opinion boils down to what I said of no one knows.
Yeah.
I had a home last year in Avon. It was a 7,200 square foot ranch with a basement. So 3,600 basement, 3,600 main. The first appraisal, and my buyers are putting like $200,000 down. So even if it didn't appraise, we were like, we're fine, you know. But then it didn't appraise by so much that it changed, and you probably know the terminology more, but it basically, I think it changed like their MI rate or something like that. And it was going to be like $120 more for their mortgage payment per month because of how low the appraisal came in, or something triggered because of the low appraisal. It came in like $70,000 low, and it was going to cause like a $115 increase in the mortgage payment. So we got like 17 days till closing.
Bullshit.
I can't name the lender, but it's a West Coast lender I'm not a huge fan of.
You're fine.
Yeah.
I was like, because if the appraisal comes in low, just so for future reference, if the appraisal comes in low, you go off your loan to value would be what affects your MI in that case, or your debt to income ratio goes with your loan to value goes off of whatever's lower. So if you have a $100,000 house, sales price comes in at 75, your loan to value now goes off that 75. Your down payment, everything goes off that 75, not the 100. Increasing MI as a result, your loan to value doesn't change.
Maybe it changed their rating, I guess, for the loan.
Maybe if they
Could it have
kept
changed
that.
the interest rate?
No, the only thing it could have been is maybe they were putting down 20%, and because it came in low, they fell at 5%.
Or they fell below 20.
Yeah, and so they were putting 5%, 10% down, and that could be, but it doesn't change a factor that would affect MI.
Maybe that could be it. Because again, 200,000 down on it had to be like 620 or 630,000, I think.
Sorry, lender, for saying it was bullshit. It might be real.
But anyways, so 17 days to closing, and I'm arguing with the lender. I'm like, look, we got to fight this appraisal. Like and it was a dog shit appraisal. Like, I don't think this is the standard anymore, but I feel like appraisers should live within this world. Have you heard the 10, 15, 25 rule?
Mm-mm.
So a single line item, you shouldn't adjust more than 10%. The net adjustment shouldn't exceed 15%, and the gross adjustment shouldn't exceed 25%. And I say shouldn't because I don't think it's a rule anymore. This is my personal opinion. One of them, the gross adjustments, was 40%. And when you come to the mentality of choosing comps in the first place, the more you adjust, the more you should ask, is this a good comp? If you adjust half of the home, that's a bad comp. Right? So I'm having this conversation with the lender, and they're like, yeah, we agree with you. And I'm like, are you going to do anything to fix it? And they're like, we can't. I'm like, can we order a second appraisal? And they're like, no. And I was like, then you're going to lose a client. They're like, we know. And I'm like, this is insane. So we switch lenders. We order an appraisal in a rush. It came in at value, which again proves you never know. 2 people appraised the same home 8 days apart and came in 10% different on price. And we closed.
Appraisals are wild.
Man.
My first low appraisal was on my sister's house, by the way.
Ooh.
So
Was she pissed?
so I was at a lender, and we just ordered another appraisal, and then I got my hand slapped for doing it. And I was like, this is my sister's house. I'm not fucking losing this loan.
Right.
I'll pay for the other appraisal. We don't need it. That's why you guys have 2 AMCs.
Man.
So they were needless. So my boss was caught between a rock and a hard place of, I really want this funding for the month because it was a $450,000 house, and you shouldn't have done that.
What is, from a lender's perspective, what is the aversion to ordering a second appraisal?
So the consumer can't pay for the 2 appraisals. So that's the first thing. So that cost is on them. The second thing is it looks like, if I had to guess, the back end, this is part of it of my business that I don't know a lot. If I had to guess, it would be that you knowingly have an appraisal that is low and you're evaporating it for a high appraisal. Like, you're just ignoring it.
Right.
So in the world of like FHA, theoretically, you would need 2 more appraisals if an appraisal came in low.
Right, just to keep it fair.
Just to keep, so, if you're doing a 1-to-1 and just accepting the better, why even have the appraisal at all?
Man, because here, from the realtor perspective, the one thing I've thought is, like, when you order a second appraisal, the occurrence rate of the second appraisal coming back good is nearly 100%. And I think the reason is because if the appraiser knows they're the second appraisal, what do they know about the first one?
And I'm going to talk about something that's going to make you excited.
Okay.
But understand, I have not looked into it enough, and I haven't sold it yet. So I would like to start that. But Fannie and Freddie just rolled out, I believe, a way to update those appraisal waivers. So I pay $150, and rather than get an appraisal, I am updating their database for the appraisal waiver by providing them comps.
Now the buyer still has to put 20% down.
No, the appraisal waiver can come at 5%. The appraisal waiver just says, like, Fannie and Freddie acknowledge that this house is worth $230, $240. But since the real estate agents have done such a great job marketing these homes, and they've all gone up by 20% value.
I'm gonna hit you up later for more details on this.
That's fine. So I think it just came out this month, and I just haven't messed with it. It's sort of like when COVID came out and they were doing drive-by appraisals. That was a short-term thing, but this is a long-term thing, and so I just need to look into it a little bit better. But I believe you can directly update Fannie and Freddie's appraisal waiver process.
I've always kind of wished they just wouldn't let appraisals derail a transaction within a certain threshold. So say, like, within 2% of contract price.
That's the great thing about investor loans, right? Now we're at 7% interest rates. They don't really care about appraised values when you do those DSCR type loans or those cash buyers. It's like, no, we believe the house is worth this. We'll trust our math, not theirs.
Right.
It'd be nice if lenders did the same thing.
Man.
Like, hey, we have our own professionals that have never fucked us. Let's use them.
Just no one wants to be liable for saying what the home is worth, but the reality is we're all guessing. Like, me in a listing agent capacity, I have to guess 2 numbers. Hopefully they're the same number, but I've got to guess, what is someone going to buy this for, and what's it going to appraise for? Like, I have a home right now in North Carolina that I think appraisal's not an issue. But, man, finding a buyer at $560,000 for a 2,500 square foot ranch, good luck, right now.
He'll sell it, don't worry.
We're at like a month on the market. I'm sweating bullets. My clients don't listen to podcasts, thank God.
That's what happens when you hire a 1% real estate agent.
Man. But yeah, and then I've had other homes where you list it and you're like, man, especially the last 2 years, I can get a buyer at any price I want. Is it going to appraise? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it changes the strategy. But again, I'm guessing buyer activity, appraisal value.
And that's what we'll see if gap stays around as a thing. But that's what I found interesting about last year's market was the number of people who are like, we know this house isn't going to appraise.
Yeah.
Here's an extra $10K.
Gaps are gone.
Maybe.
Dude, I haven't seen one in 7-8 months.
No.
Dude, it's so rare right now. And we sell, I mean, we don't sell the most homes, but we sell a shitload of homes. And I just haven't seen a gap in a long time. Also, I don't know if you saw, I was in the Indy Star last year talking about appraisal gaps.
No, what'd you say?
So the lady I got connected with at the Indy Star, she reached out to 3 different agents. One of the other agents called it appraisal creep. And I kind of like that term because getting the appraisal gap to creep up property values, I mean, that really panned out. Like one empirical example, and ironically, I think I talked about this home a minute ago. We sold the home last year. I think we listed it like $290 or $295 in Brownsburg, and it sold for like the purchase agreement was for $340 with like a $25,000 appraisal gap, and we're like, sold, right? And it appraised low, obviously, but with the gap, we ended up getting like $330, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the sellers are ecstatic. And then one of the neighbors called, and they're like, hey, can you do that for us? And we're like, sure. But our strategy last year was to list lower than we thought it would sell for to incur that activity to get the appraisal gaps. And so that one, we ended up selling for like $330, $335, same thing, huge appraisal gap. And then we saw one of the other neighbors listed with a different agency, and they listed at $340.
Okay.
And they got like $310 or $320. And so last year, the strategy was largely list low, incite a riot, get buyers cashing out their 401ks, and go that way. And then this year, it's like start at what you would like to get and then prepare to periodically or incrementally drop the price. And that's obviously a lot tougher on realtors. You know, we're not the heroes this year like we were last year.
Yeah, it would be tough to have your job this year. So I don't envy it.
Yeah.
So we'll
and you
see.
kind of hit the nail on the head too of we work a lot with strangers. Like I have never in my life said to one of my agents, work your sphere, right? If their sphere comes around, great. If it doesn't happen, I don't care.
I think I say the same thing to like Christian and my guys all the time, which is like, it's just business. Like, cause they're like, oh, my sister did the loan with somebody else. Is like, who cares? It's
Right.
business, you know? If she didn't want to use you, there's probably a reason, you know, either it's personality, she didn't want to fight, or she didn't want to tell you her finances, embarrassed about her credit score, her husband doesn't trust you, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So,
Man, I think, I mean, I'm speculating, but I definitely think on the loan side, it's got to be not knowing their finances. Like they don't want family to know their shit.
yeah, I mean, I don't have that issue. My friends and family kept us alive in the last 2 years, which is super cool. But it's also sometimes when you do ask that question for the first time, they're like, Jimmy, come on.
You're like, I got to ask.
I'm like, you know I don't care. And they're like, I know. All right.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting. So, so why should, like, what's the pitch? If I was wanting to be a real estate agent, why come to Whitestag? You know, outside of everything that we've talked today.
Man, leads and training. I mean, I am a lead service that trains and supports my agents.
Okay. And how many leads a month do you think you provide, or a year? Is that fair?
Yeah. I tend to give more leads to people right out of the gate to get the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. And the goal long term is the ball keeps rolling and we don't have to keep funneling them leads, right? So like last year, this time, I'd probably given Daniel 30 leads for the year, and it probably generated 15 or 20 transactions. And then we're starting to see this year, like some of those previous transactions are becoming repeat business. Like he's got these 2 brothers that all their family flips homes, and he just keeps listing their flips. And then now, like, I think the cousin lives in Puerto Rico and offered to put Daniel and his wife up in Puerto Rico next summer, you know? So it's like, it was this, and literally it was so funny. The first lead with this family I gave Daniel, he goes in the house. First, he showed up for the appointment, knocked on the door. No one came out. So he like goes out to his car. He calls them. They're in the house. They thought he was a cop, right? And I'm like, wow. And then he goes in the house and there's heroin needles everywhere. And he's having that moment of like, man, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, man, tell him clean the needles. You can't sell a home like that. See what you think it's going to be worth. This is obviously not one of their flipped properties. They were just trying to get rid of the home.
And it wasn't their needles.
I don't judge. Who knows, right? Sidebar: have you ever watched Intervention?
No.
Man, sometimes I watch people on that show shoot heroin. It looks like it feels great. Then when you, I mean, like I eat a Whopper and a Whopper tastes fantastic, and then you watch someone shoot heroin, you're like, oh my god, that's got to be like 1,000 Whoppers. But then when I saw this many needles, because Daniel took pictures, I'm like, someone died in this house. There is no way. Or that's like 10 years of heroin. But anyway, so they clean the needles. He sells the home. And then the next home they got is a flip. And it's like in great condition. And then you got another one and another one. And so that's the leads. My goal is not to give every agent leads like in the same quantity year over year, right? I also have to keep in mind, I mean, some weeks we have slow weeks in terms of getting leads. But man, most brokerages don't give any to their agents. So if I give 5 deals to one of my agents in a calendar year, that's great. You know, it's on them to turn that 5 into a couple more, generate some of their own, post about it so their friends and family use them or something. So yeah, I would say low end, I probably give 3 to 5 leads to some of the agents per year, and then some I give 20, 25, 30. And part of the differentiation is full-time versus part-time, because I got a lot of part-timers.
Okay. How many of your 17 are part-time?
Man, ballparking, probably 10 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What about like, I think you said capping and everything like that. Do you guys cap? Do you want to get into that, or is that trade secrets?
No, it's fine. What's the question?
Like, do you guys cap? Where do you guys cap your people at? What do you...
Cap at 25,000.
Let's pretend like other real estate... I'm friends with other real estate agents.
Yeah.
So, ironically, Josh and I have only done 2 deals together, and it was with his team, not him. So...
Yeah, one was Chris. What was the other one? Courtney?
Courtney, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And that's another one we're already getting repeat business from.
Yeah.
So hopefully she hits you up, but...
Yeah. They're both fantastic. That Chris deal was a little bit weird, so that was a tough one. So...
And that's another one where the first appraisal came in just incredibly low, and the second came in over list price.
It did.
It was like a 30% swing, I think.
Yeah. And then the DSCR, having the DSCR,
Yeah.
first-time investors, that loan took some work. We got it done, though.
Man. So, yeah, so we cap agents at 25,000. Man, Courtney's a good example. We brought Courtney from another firm last summer.
Mm-hmm.
So she's right about 14 or 15 months with us. And this year, she capped in June. I was like, oh, my God. Last year, Daniel capped in November, so the last couple of transactions, he got 100%. He bought all his kids 4-wheelers for Christmas. I think as a business owner, it's cool to see because, like, I achieved my financial goal of income from Daniel's production. Daniel achieved his financial goal of income for himself. And I think there is a little bit of that altruistic part of, like, seeing his kids get fucking 4-wheelers for Christmas was great.
Yeah.
You know, being able to afford someone that opportunity, it's not something I went into business looking forward to, but it is a really cool, like, ancillary achievement.
It's a lot of fun when, like, one of our people bought a house and
Yeah.
used us for their loan. We're like,
Man.
this is super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was weird filling out the WVOE for it.
You're like, yes, I can verify. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, but yeah, and then like we brought on Kylie from another brokerage. I think she started like June 4th or July 4th, something like that. She might cap this year. I mean, she's transacting 10% of her career production like in the next 4 weeks.
Where do you cap people at?
25,000.
25,000?
Yeah.
And then if you provide them the leads, what's that split look like?
I almost every time I keep it the same. So most of the agents are at a 70-30 split.
You get 70 or they get 70?
They get 70.
You get 30.
Mm-hmm.
It's awfully generous of you.
Yeah.
That seems... I know you guys... So you do Google SEO better than most people because you're not buying leads. You're using Google.
Right. So we did do the Google verified. I think technically we pay some money for those leads each month.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we get about 10,000 views a month on Google. Usually that's going to generate 40 to like 60 phone calls. Some of those people are crazy. I've learned there's a good and a bad side to being top on Google as you get the ones like, hey, y'all do rentals? And we're like, nope, we certainly don't. But yeah, it'll in a month, it's 15 to 25 actual transactions.
That's a lot
Right.
for no spend.
And for 18 agents or 7, whatever we're at, 17, 18, I don't know. That's about a deal a month per agent.
If you only have to close 10 in a year to be successful, it's nice,
Yeah.
especially if it's a side hustle.
Man, I know. Like, I don't know if you know, but like Chris, this is a side hustle for him.
I do know because
know.
every time I'd call him, be like, "Hey, I'm on the phone."
Yeah, like he has full-time employment, and
he's got such a smooth voice on the phone too. He's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
man.
I'm on the other line."
And if you ever see him in person, he kind of looks like Nicolas Cage. I mean, he's charming in person. He's got a great voice, but he's got a full-time job, and he produces more. I mean, a lot more than the average agent. I don't know how he does it. Part of it is leads, I guess.
He did say he was waiting for this job to. Oh, I should probably shouldn't air him out like that.
Yeah.
He's waiting. So
Aren't we all, right?
tough thing. It's a tough thing. So, do you prefer hiring full-time agents over part-time agents? Do you have a preference?
The only reason I prefer full-time agents is from an availability, like time slot availability standpoint. So a lot of the part-timers are only available in the evenings. So their questions come in at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9:30, and agents calling me because they're writing an offer for a client. And it's like, man, had you been able to prep this during the day, you might have had this question 6 hours ago. So that part's a little tough.
How do you balance that with a wife and young child?
I feel guilty. So I do, yeah,
It's tough.
it is. And you alluded to something earlier too. So my wife is now a realtor for us. She doesn't actually produce anymore. She just manages all of our transactions for us, which is great. But the reason I bring that up is because before she got into real estate, we went to Clemson like 2 summers ago, and there was and my son was like 1.5 or 2 or something, so he still was taking afternoon naps at the time. So we went out, we did some stuff, we go back to the hotel, Bo's napping, and I hop on my computer to catch up on work stuff real quick. And Joanna's like, "We're on vacation." I'm like, "I know, but I'm like contractually obligated to do some of this stuff, and he's sleeping, so we're not going to do it." And I felt more guilty then. Now she's in real estate, and so like last year she was producing, and we went somewhere on vacation, and we both had to bring our computers. And I was like, "You get it now." She's like, "Yeah." So having her have that perspective has helped a lot.
It's easier when it's yours. Like, I think because I've been a loan officer now for 6 years. And so at Christmas when I was doing pre-approvals and everything like that, and it was somebody else's company, Tasha would roll her eyes at me and be like, "Why are you doing that?"
Yeah.
But now that it's mine, I think it's almost more, or ours, I think it's more accepting.
It's yours, but for divorce purposes, it's both of yours. Just kidding.
No. I'd give her half.
I'm just messing.
She
She seemed, I mean, just from your Facebook presence, she seems very, very supportive of what you're doing and all your various ventures.
She is more. The entrepreneurship bug has bit her. Now that we know that we can generate cash and stuff, she's on board. But this was the first thing, because I've always wanted to do something, and this was the first thing. She's like, "Yes, go ahead and do it. I think you'll be fine."
Yeah.
And then we did it. We're fine. And so, like, when I took her the Turo thing, I thought she was gonna say no, and she's like, "Fuck it, why not?"
Man, how many cars do you have on that now?
5.
Wow.
5, yeah. So we've made, I think it says $14,000 in the last 2 months
Wow.
renting cars. So not profitable yet.
Yeah.
100% not
Right.
recommending anyone do this. But one of the reasons is we're down a car, and so I think if that car was on the road, I would be $1,000, which I don't want $1,000, and so
Yeah.
the time I'm investing isn't worth that $1,000.
Right.
But if somebody only needs to make $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, I think you could own 5 to 10 cars in Indiana make 2 or 3 grand and be out. And I fucked up because I got Teslas, and that's not where the money's at. The money's in like $200 or $300 gas guzzlers,
Yeah.
but it also comes with like more cleanup. Like
Right.
people return my Teslas immaculate, and they return that Mini Cooper just beat the fuck up. It's disgusting.
But yeah, I mean, Tasha's support of you is a huge factor of your success.
And she's growing. Like,
Yeah.
so
Does she have any of the entrepreneurial ideas, or is it you generate the idea and then she's let's do this?
no, she has ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's way smarter than me. So it's not like
I bet like as we speak, she's looking into a Steak and Shake franchise. Just kidding.
she should be. Tasha, I'm bringing that one home.
Oh my God.
But the no, so I usually run things. You know, I've surrounded myself with people who tell me the truth, and if I have a stupid idea, which 99% of my ideas are stupid, she tells me it's stupid, and then moves on. And then if like I'm hanging on to it, she'll put more thought into it.
Right.
So
And it's tough to find someone like that because so many people are afraid to say like, oh, that is a dumb idea.
she said it for like 10 years.
Yeah.
She's like,
When you
no.
were like, will you marry me? She's like, that is a dumb idea. I'm
I was
just
like, hey, Terry and I want to start a carpet cleaning business. She's like, why?
yeah.
This is a terrible idea. How are you going to make money cleaning carpets?
Man.
So,
Have you ever heard the term ugly baby syndrome?
no, I only have cute babies.
Okay, so you have ugly baby syndrome. So I think I learned this when I was managing like City Barbecue, but their like regional training manager was this dude Frank, and he was the first person to ever tell me about ugly baby syndrome. He said one thing that plagues a lot of professionals is they have an idea or they want to implement something and it's just stupid. And they will not admit it despite either lack of results, lack of successful results, or pure feedback telling them it's stupid. And then I went to work at a hotel where I think ugly baby syndrome was rampant. And I say all that to say this, like, you hit the nail on the head of you need people to be honest with you and say when that's a dumb idea. They're telling you your baby is ugly. And your ability or openness to accept that is going to be huge in your long-term growth and longevity in this industry or as a Tesla renter or whatever you do the most. I haven't had a shitload of stupid ideas so far with the real estate thing, but I've certainly had a couple.
This could be one of our stupid ideas doing podcasts.
Man, like for instance, when I started the company, I was like, hey, we can manage this whole thing on Google Sheets.
That's a terrible idea.
So stupid.
I think I told you that like 2 years ago. I was like,
Yeah,
dude,
probably.
Google Sheets is fucking terrible.
Man, and like now it's a little more structured and stuff, but I think I saw ugly baby syndrome so much. Like at the hotel, there was an app that someone created so that clients for like the conventions in the city could input like what they need at any given time, and then the hotel staff had to log into the app and like fix whatever needed fix and then update the app, and the app crashed like daily, right? So we weren't getting the requests. And then what they did before the app is the client could just text you directly. And I'm like, why would we go away from that, right? And I fought that for like a year and a half. I eventually left the hotel, not because of that, but and then I found out now they dropped the app and they're going back to texting. But how long that person that made the app or that was their initiative had the ugly baby syndrome, I mean, it was at times a detriment to operations.
Yeah.
So again, I think one trait of successful individuals is you got to admit when your baby's ugly, because they may grow into a beautiful person, but they're ugly right now. Your kids are not ugly.
No, my kids are beautiful.
Yeah.
I make good looking babies. You should look them up.
I'm on your Facebook.
They're good looking babies. He hasn't said that they're good looking yet. Do you think I have ugly babies? Oliver's new haircut is fucking terrible.
What'd you say?
I think all babies are ugly.
My son has a new haircut that I got him on Saturday.
I don't
it's
think I've seen it yet.
It's a bob. It's because I haven't posted a picture of it because it's fucking terrible. I ruined his luscious long hair over the weekend. So,
I'm talking newborn babies, though.
Yeah, especially like fresh babies.
I used to think Oliver was good looking. I recently saw some pictures. I was like, dude, our kid was fucking ugly when he was a
Yeah.
baby. He looked like a pterodactyl.
Man, Bo got stuck in the birth canal for a minute, so when he came out, his head looked like alien. It was like just way back here. I was waiting for like a smaller mouth to come out of his main mouth. It was wild.
Yeah, all three of ours have come out the moonroof, so so we're good there. But Oliver was the first one who he was the reason. He's the reason why, and they pushed his little ass back through.
Man.
C-section.
Yeah.
That was in and out. That gerbil tube that they stick inside those women. I will never. I had pictures of it. It's fucking wild.
You took pictures?
Of the C-section. Yeah, the first one.
Jeez.
It was fucking wild.
Man.
Have you ever seen one? They take like this giant plastic tube that scrunches up like a pop-up tent. They cut the center open. First of all, they're not gentle. They fucking rip the skin open, stick that thing in, fucking let it explode, fucking pops out. They can stick their whole hand in. She pulled my wife's, I don't know, ovary out. I don't know what the fuck. It's like organ out, and was like looking at it. She goes, look, it's heart-shaped. And I'm like, put that shit back in. She needs it.
Yeah.
So it was fucking wild. So like
I feel like
Oliver's crying and she's like still cut wide open with the fucking. I mean, it is not a small hole. It's like rib cage to rib cage size hole, and she's just talking to Oliver like not feeling anything. Thank God. No, they got like a 10 only.
yeah,
I mean,
like
she's
a
seen
tarp.
the pictures now, obviously, but they got like a. I think if they could see it, that'd be wild.
I know, right?
So
Man. She was awake during it?
yeah, they're awake when they're getting those C-sections.
Wow.
So it was.
Was there any mold inside? Okay, just kidding. Yeah. Man.
So Oliver's blue eyes, so more German,
Man.
Swedish.
All right, what else you got?
I think that's really it for me, man. Unless you want to get into conspiracy theories,